Alright, here we go. Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to the stream. It appears that the streaming page that we were on, we've been talking for about the past couple of minutes. It appears that that page, well, showed the active stream. It did not appear that we were actually streaming over to YouTube. That problem has been resolved. We will be going over the extra 5 minutes as a result of that. But we should be on the air now. If you're in chat, please let me know if we are on the air at this time. But I believe that we are on the air now. So, yeah. Slight issues there, but those have been figured out. We will now be running this from the beginning. So let's start off with Haichen. Alright, thank you all so much for letting me know that we're on the air. I do have a team with me tonight. That does include Rain, Mike, and Ryan. As all of you know, we've been talking about this for a little bit. What are your thoughts on Haichen right now?
Well, to be quite honest, Haichen has kind of been looking awful in the last hour or two in terms of satellite presentation. We've definitely seen a dry air slot, or it looks to be an Eyewall replacement cycle process beginning in the latest frames here. If you could pull up infrared image, if you could pull up my screen with infrared imagery, I'll go ahead and show it to you.
Alright, yeah. Go ahead and show that for everyone so we can see what it is that you're showing. So, what is it that we're looking at here?
This is the latest visible infrared imagery on Haichen. Sorry, I have trouble pronouncing that name. On the latest, Shemai, could you go ahead and pronounce that name for me?
Haishen.
Haichen. Okay, latest on Typhoon Haishen. And as we can see, you could definitely what Shwen, I believe it looks like a dry air slot or an eye in the beginning of an eyewall replacement cycle in the western quadrant of the system.
Yeah, I think that is definitely observed, and radar does confirm here on the Japan Meteorological Agency that an eyewall replacement cycle is currently taking place. That inner eyewall is getting choked off, and a far larger eye is about to replace it. So we are going to be seeing here
Certainly
in short order what should be
that
pretty pretty large eye. So I think that by this time tomorrow, we're going to see a very large eye moving through the Ryukyu Islands with those maximum winds of around 115 to 120 miles an hour, possibly.
certainly. Well, there's good and bad news to that. The good news is this eyewall replacement cycle will surely weaken the storm, which will sort of down the intensity impacts that they were expecting before, but expect a dramatic increase in the wind field. That's the downside to this eyewall replacement cycle that we could see going on right here with the infrared satellite imagery. As far as impacts for these islands, we could expect, I believe is it a CDPS 8 or CDPS 7 on the scale now?
At this time, it is a CDPS stage 8.
Oh, yeah, devastating damage. Definitely likely, unfortunately. Hopefully, people on those islands are taking precautions and are heeding the warnings and preparing for the worst and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I think that we are really going to see some nastier impacts, especially with that big eye wall when it comes to storm surge and wind speeds in particular. And you have a huge wind field, so you could see winds sustain themselves for quite a while. JTWC forecast cone here definitely indicates that we're going to be seeing a powerful typhoon that does head through the Ryukyu Islands before it does drop off in intensity. And now the Joint Typhoon Warning Center forecasting a tropical storm landfall in South Korea. Quite the downgrade from just a couple days ago.
Yeah, I believe they were expecting, was it a high-end category 2 or a low-end category 1 with the system, and now it looks like wind shear is definitely going to be higher than expected, and we could definitely see, and that's certainly good news for the southern islands of South Korea, of course, and Japan, the mainland Japan. Nonetheless, we could still see, unfortunately, many landslides. Despite it not being a tropical storm, it will still be a very large system. Unfortunately, we could expect maybe a CDPS 5 despite it being only just a tropical storm, due to the size and the landslides that it could cause? Maybe
Uh,
you can back that up.
yeah, so I don't have the specific calculation or rating. The rating will be lower than before. Your wind speeds are going to be lower, but everything else is going to be about the same with the storm. So I think that wouldn't be completely unreasonable. Regardless, it'll be a very dangerous storm, even as a tropical storm, because you're still going to be getting storm surge, probably up to Category 1 or 2 levels normally for up there. And then you're also going to be seeing, with the massive nature of this storm, sustained winds above 40 miles per hour for numerous hours on end. So it's going to be quite an interesting it's going to be an interesting transition to see, and it's going to be very dangerous. So if you're in the Ryukyu Islands, if you're in southern Japan, or you're in South Korea, I would be watching this very closely over the next couple of days. And
Certainly. Tom Schwen, if you can you pull up the latest? Not latest. Can you pull up my screen? I have wind shear on here just to give an idea of what harsh environments the storm is currently heading into at the moment.
yeah, here we go. So this is the wind shear map from you, Mike. So what are you thinking about how that wind shear is going to affect the storm?
I think as of right now, we could definitely see a weakening trend from this point on until all the way up until landfall on the South Korean peninsula. As you can see, we got 70 and 80 knot wind shear. Oh, is that 80 or 60? I can't really tell. But nonetheless, still high wind shear, which will definitely tear the storm to shreds. Where the wind shear is definitely higher than expected. That's certainly good news for South Korea. But nonetheless, despite it being, potentially sheared to death, the storm, as you said before, it's going to be still a very large system with a lot of storm surge. And because it's a very large system, like I said, it'll bring a lot of storm surge, as well as because the South Korean peninsula is somewhat mountainous, we could unfortunately see landslides and casualties with that.
Yeah, certainly, and that is a real dangerous threat. We will get back to Haichen here in just a second, but we do have a couple of other things that are going on around the world when it comes to the tropics. For example, Tropical Storm Julio formed today. Winds of 40 miles per hour, pressure of, I believe, 1,003 millibars. That will be a short.
It's 1,005.
1,005.
It's on, yeah, 1,005 millibars.
But it's going to be a short-lived tropical storm. And this has regenerated from the remnants of Nana. So it's quite the development. It's not expected to really impact any land. The worst that it could do for some of these islands within the cone towards the very end is bring some gusty winds and some heavier rainfall. But other than that, we're really not looking at too much in the way of what Julio is going to be capable of doing. But still, that is a new formation. And then another thing that I think a lot of us can say is reason to celebrate is Omar has finally become a post-tropical cyclone after numerous days of us waiting. I know last night we talked about it, and we've been talking about it for a while. But Omar has finally become a post-tropical cyclone. It's lost all of its convection. It's moving out to sea. And with Omar moving out, we have more disturbances moving in to take its place. We have a feature in the Caribbean that we'll be looking at shortly that has a nice spin to it, but the NHC only gives it a 10% chance of development. We have another system. This is Disturbance 1, 90% chance of development within the next 5 days. This could be a robust tropical cyclone as it moves through the MDR. And it could either recurve out to sea, which is a possibility, but it could certainly impact the Greater and Lesser Antilles farther out, maybe even the Bahamas. We'll have to see. But long range, that could be a threat to some land areas. And then in the even longer range, we have a storm with an 80% chance of development, Disturbance 392L, I believe, and that's going to be moving over the ocean shortly. So we'll be seeing that. Disturbance 3 and Disturbance 1, which is 92L, will be moving through and likely developing soon, and it would create the earliest P and R name storms on record if they were to be named. So the Atlantic continues to be really active, and we'll see what happens there. David, sounds like you've joined us. What are your thoughts on Haichen?
It's been another impressive system. and it is definitely on a weakening trend. Joy Typhoon warning Shen. I think the wave height's down to about, I think it's 28 feet, but it's got to be here to bring the latest information. And I still think about the search and rescue for that live stock ship that went down due to the previous typhoon. And I'm just wondering whether the search and rescue operations have been currently suspended. But it's been interesting, and hi to our viewers.
Yeah, and speaking of the viewers, we're going to be taking questions here shortly. We're just going to go over a couple more things, and then we'll be open for questions for the night. Firstly, I have some visible imagery of Julio open here. It's getting sheared quite a bit. That's something that is interesting to look at for sure. 40 miles per hour on that again, and still definitely an interesting storm over there. I'm not sure if we've gone over our intensity estimate for Haichen just yet, but we're estimating 120 miles per hour, 938 millibars at this time. So 120, 938. And we could very well see that go down to 115 within the next couple of hours, depending on what objective estimates say. Things of that nature. So we'll see what happens, but definitely we've established that Haichen is undergoing an eyewall replacement cycle, and you can see that massive new eyewall that's forming, and that shear is really going to start to disrupt Haishen's structure even more than it already has in short order. Alright, well, with that being said, we are now going to be taking questions from everyone, so if you have any questions, please ask, and we will be more than glad to answer them. Just tag us at Force13 on the live chat. We will be more than glad to answer them. We're going to go back up a little bit and see what questions we do have at this point. Oh, we have someone saying, hello, Nathan. I'm sure that he does appreciate that. He's not here tonight, but he'll be back tomorrow. Alright, we do have a question. Where is Invest 99A and 91S? So, anyone have any comments on that?
99A. That's the one up there in the North Indian.
I believe so, yes.
Yes, I'm just looking at the information the viewers say. Anyone else that has some thoughts on it?
Yeah, it looks like there's very little model support for either of them to develop, but 99A is off the coast of India to the west, and then we also have 91S, which is out in the middle of nowhere in the South Indian Ocean. That won't be impacting any land anytime soon.
Yeah, it's 420.
Go on.
Sorry, mate. It's 425 nautical miles east of Diego Garcia, and as we said in our previous update with Nathan, it's not going to impact any land. So that one's going to remain at sea. And I'm just looking at the India Meteorological Department to see what information they've got on it.
Yeah.
On the other one.
Yeah, we'll see what they find. So we have another question. Is there any chance of a hurricane hitting Portugal this Atlantic hurricane season? I have my doubts about that. To the team, what are your thoughts?
No.
It's a very, very, very unlikely scenario. I mean, in past, the tropics have proved that the impossible is possible. But in terms of, if you want an honest percentage chance out of 100, I'll give it a 1.5 at most. Even if that. If there's like a 90% chance they won't even get a remnant of the system, so it's very unlikely.
Yeah. We have another question. What is your projected strength when this hits? And I'm going to mess this up. Futoka. So that was completely butchered and screwed up. But I have no idea where that is. I'll be figuring that out. But when it comes to a particular area, it's
Fukuoka.
yes.
That is on the northern side. It's like
I see.
on the northern side of Kyushu. Yeah.
I go with about 80 miles an hour as the center makes its closest pass, and that's an aggressive estimate. I think tropical storm force winds, though, are not out of the question at all. If you are over there. I live in the middle of South Korea. Will this affect me? Yes, it will. You'll probably get tropical storm force winds, regardless of where you are in South Korea. The odds of that are greater than 50%. You'll see on the sidebar here every once in a while those tropical storm force wind probabilities pop up. And there's nothing below a 70% chance. There's actually 169% chance on there, but nothing below 70%, and that's and a lot of those cities are in South Korea. There is nowhere below a 60% chance in South Korea, I don't believe, for tropical storm force winds. I can actually check that real quick. Here are the chances of tropical storm force winds. They've actually gone down quite a bit since last I checked, but we do have a 40 to 50% chance on the very northern side, and then you get above 50% once you're about halfway down and above, with some places up to 70 or 80%. These were significantly higher earlier today when the JTWC was predicting a stronger landfall. When it comes to the chance of typhoon force conditions, would you look at that? Those chances don't go above 20% anywhere in South Korea. But if you are in Japan, those chances do get quite substantial, so I would be watching out if you're over there.
Thomas, I'm just looking at the South Korean Met Office information, and I'm going to read, these are maximum sustained winds. I think they're 12-hour blocks, starting off with 184, 180, 169, 144, 126, and 97. That is on the 8th.
All right, and is that in kilometers per hour?
Yes. So 184, 180, 169, 144, 126, 97.
And where are those observations coming from?
They're the maximum sustained winds on the Korean Met Office website. And I posted the typhoon track chart in the discussion room, live comms room.
All right, well,
so you should have that one available.
Yeah, I do. All right, we have more questions. We're preparing here. Let's see. How close are each of the tropical disturbances currently over the Atlantic to becoming a tropical depression or storm? And when do you believe that future waves will develop? So this is a question for the Atlantic, and basically our thoughts on the Atlantic. And I know that our team does keep a close eye on that. So I guess I'll start with Ryan. What are your thoughts on the state of the Atlantic Ocean right now?
Of course, we're getting to prime time, peak season, 5 days away. The climatological peak of the Atlantic hurricane season is about September 10th. And, there's two high chances of development within the next 5 days. One of them is over the Atlantic already, west of the Cape Verde Islands. That has a 90% chance of cyclone formation in 5 days. Probably, my guess is that it's going to become a tropical depression sometime tomorrow, maybe early Monday, and that's going to be moving towards, the west. It's really too early to say, where that system's going to go. It could, track over the Caribbean. Who knows? Who knows? We'll worry about it when it gets closer to, the real news territory. And then there's the one to the east of that. that is currently over Africa. That has an 80% chance of a cyclone formation in 5 days. That is probably going to form as it moves off the coast of Africa. And again, much like the system towards the west, both kind of, they could, impact land. It's not really something to get like overly worried about right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, long tracked hurricanes out of these, but that's a long ways. So if you're like on the east coast of the US or the Gulf Coast or in the Caribbean, don't worry just yet. Keep an eye on it, sure, just don't, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, don't freak out too much over that.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely an interesting state of things in the Atlantic. Go on.
Shen, if you could pull up my imagery here of the Caribbean, I have an interesting feature to note. Just want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, all right, let's take a look at it. Yeah, and so, yeah, it is an interesting feature. I'd assume you're talking about that low pressure system just north of Cuba. That is a really interesting feature, to say the least. Will it become a tropical cyclone? There's not really any model support for it. We'll see what happens, but that's definitely an interesting area to watch here over the next day or two. That is for sure. Alright, we have some more questions, so let's take a look at those. How much more time does Haichen have to strengthen after it completes the Eyewall replacement cycle? I think its time is up. I don't think there's any more strengthening that Haishen's going to do. I think it's all weakening from here. Shear's going up, that Eyewall replacement cycle's occurring. I don't think it's going to have time to really strengthen anymore. I think its strengthening days are done.
Shen, just something to know. We've noticed that the GFS model support for 92L has it's sort of somewhat shifted south, I would say. I don't know if you can agree with me on that. If I could I'll pull up the latest models here on the GFS 18. If we look, you'll notice that from yesterday, they don't have it as strong as they had it before, but they have it trending a little bit more south before they make that northern curve due to the high pressure system. Do you think perhaps if that system strengthens, we could definitely see those models trend more to the southwest even more?
I think that we could see a slight southwestward shift. I don't know how much of a long-term shift that's going to have. Sorry about that in the background. Don't know what that is.
It sounds like a vacuum cleaner.
Yes, it does. But yeah, Mike, why don't you talk about that for a little bit while I figure out what's going
on? Certainly. Now, as we could see, we'll go ahead and roll back the model archive to, let's go 24 hours back, 18Z Friday, September the 4th. If we go here, we could see that, if you guys can see that, we could see, I believe that's the one that comes off the coast of Africa, that's scheduled to come off the coast of Africa in the next few days. We could see that it shifts, it takes that really hard northern turn as it strengthens due to the high pressure system. It gets squeezed between these two high pressure systems that sort of skyrockets it up north. And then it sort of does this loop-de-loop thing, which is kind of unusual, but the models are pretty unreliable that far out, especially the GFS. But if we go 24 hours ahead, which is the current time, 18Z, for Saturday, September the 5th, we could see that these models have shifted slightly south of anything, or that northern turn has extended by another maybe 300 miles, I would say. Quite unusual that the GFS is doing that. The GFS really hasn't shown any model support for any system this year, as the Atlantic has proved that. If we go to the latest infrared loop, we can see that there's not much convection associated with 92L, but we can definitely see some low-level circulation with that. I don't know if any of you guys want to touch up on that.
Yeah, so I've returned. we could see a low-level center here coming up soon. I think we definitely have a vorticity maximum within this. I'm not sure if we have a closed center at this point in time.
Certainly.
But we certainly do have a vorticity maximum on this. And Mike, I think that's what you have pulled up right now?
Yes, this is 850 millibar vorticity, if you want to touch upon this. And what are your thoughts on this currently?
Yeah, so we can see two obvious areas of interest there. That one over Africa with that elongated vorticity, some of that vorticity over the Atlantic now, and then we have that other blob of vorticity there on the very left side of your screen. And that looks like it's consolidated significantly since yesterday. You still have your two lobes of maximum vorticity, with the eastern side still being stronger than the western. But I think that we're definitely seeing things better organized from an upper level structure basis. So definitely something to keep a close eye on.
Certainly, we could see that vorticity is bundling itself together in the last few hours. We'll go ahead and look at wind shear. Wind shear looks to be moderate for development at the moment. Schwen, I do believe we expect that wind shear levels to become more favorable in the coming days, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, wind shear is expected to become more favorable with time, hence those high chances of development given by the National Hurricane Center.
Certainly. Let's go ahead and pull up upper level. Schwen, if you want to go ahead and touch upon these upper level winds in the area.
Yeah, so upper winds, and you can actually see that kind of correlates with the shear. You can see where those stronger upper winds are in those greens and yellows. In particular, you can see where we have those wind observations, and they're quite strong. But those are different altitudes in the atmosphere, those colors, not the strength of the wind in particular. But you can see there those weaker barbs, 30 to 40 knots, mostly in the 100 to 200 millibar level, and then from 250 to 350, we start to see some barbs significantly lower, where we have the most observations in the very high levels, and then you can also see that 350 to 500 millibar level, those ones as well. But wind observations overall showing that there's quite a bit of shear that exists from the observations that we do currently have.
Schwen, I don't know if you want to go ahead and answer this question, but someone asked, what are the chances of a northeastern impact again this year? U.S. northeast impact.
So that's kind of up in the air. I'd say that's relatively unlikely, at least from a climatological standpoint. I think that the Northeast is not really going to get any big tropical cyclones this year. I certainly could be wrong, but I am of the opinion that we're not going to see much there. As for the Gulf of Mexico and places like that, on the other hand, I think that we could definitely see a significantly different story. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Thomas, just picking up on the Gulf of Mexico, Mike, can you bring back the 850 millibar vorticity for the Gulf?
Certainly.
Two possible areas, but it's something I cited earlier.
850?
850, yeah, vorticity. A little bit of vorticity, the Gulf of Mexico and off the central eastern coast, the Carolinas. So possibly two areas of interest, but not.
We see that there is a little bit of. We see that there's a little bit, just a tad bit of vorticity, possibly associated with that low level center. Models haven't really shown support for many systems this year. Environmental conditions for any development, if this were to develop, is unlikely, but it's definitely something to take note of because as we could see, the global support models haven't really been reliable this year for the Atlantic. So we could expect something to develop out of this low level center. Is it likely? No. Is it possible? Yes.
Yeah, that's a general sentiment. We're seeing lots of possibilities.
Basically, the main activities, the MTR region.
Certainly, as we could see, we go back to the I believe that's 91L. We certainly see that big blob of energy that's sort of bundling itself together, and we expect it to continue to bundle itself together in the next coming days. Certainly. We have. Go ahead.
Go on. I was just going to ask, how close are we to seeing the Greek alphabet? The Greek.
I believe we're 5 names away.
Yeah, I believe so, because we just got through Nana and Omar. So we have Paulette, and then we have R, S, T, and W. Yeah, so we're 5 names away. We could definitely get to Greek names here in September. We'll have to see. That would be record-breaking. The only other season to get to Greek names, as you all know, is 2005. So we will see what happens there. A couple of questions that have come in. Do you think Haichen could miss South Korea altogether and make landfall on Japan's main island? Now, this is certainly a fair question for sure when it comes to Haichen. But as of now, the possibility of this missing is very low. You can actually see right here on this model chart. This is the GEFS ensembles. And I think only one of them hits the main island of Japan, and just barely. So the odds that the main island of Japan gets significant impacts relatively high, but the odds of landfall are pretty low in Japan. Alright, we have another question. In your analysis, was Haichen a Category 5 because Haichen was actually a Category 4 high-end? Here, for clarification on the intensity of Haichen, Force 13 had run with 160 miles per hour on 2 occasions, as per a couple nights ago, and yesterday morning into the afternoon, at least my time, when the satellite appearance looked very, very good on it. And then Force 13 downgraded it. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center never had it above 155 miles per hour, and I don't think the JMA ever made the upgrade to Category 5 either. So official agencies never did make the call for a Category 5, but Force 13 did make the upgrade on a couple of occasions during Haishen's life. Alright, we also have another question. How many storms do you expect for the remainder of hurricane season? Well, we haven't made a new outlook in a few months now, and Nathan is much better about that than I am. But I'd say that we could have 7 or 8 more down the pipeline when it comes to just how many storms to expect. And some would even argue that that could be a conservative forecast. So it's going to be quite the ride in the Atlantic over the next couple of days and months, for that matter.
Certainly.
Yeah, and Mike, I see you do have that Haichen imagery pulled up there. What are we looking at right now with it? I know that an eyewall replacement cycle is occurring, but it looks like that eyewall, that inner eyewall, is trying to bounce back right now.
Yeah, it looks like earlier we thought that we were pretty much certain that the eyewall replacement cycle was underway, but it looks like it's trying to tighten off the eyewall it's contained for most of its life. Do we expect to keep that for that eyewall to be kept? It's not very likely, but as we could see, the Western Pacific has done things that we've expected. Is it possible? It's unlikely. If we look at this pocket of dry air and infringement in the system, it's certainly on radar. We could tell. It's lost convection around it to support a good healthy eye wall. I believe the eye temperature, Shen, if I'm not mistaken, has dropped a little, or has it sustained its 20 degrees Celsius high?
No, that has dropped a fair bit. I think it's right now in the teens. I'm not even sure if it's there, but last I checked, it was in the mid-teens. Not 100% sure what it's at now. But yeah, I mean, that eyewall replacement cycle, like you said, with that inner eyewall bouncing back, that does make things kind of interesting. But Japanese radar shows a very, very robust outer eyewall. I don't see that inner eyewall making it out of this cycle. I think the outer eyewall has already established itself. It's just a matter of time before that inner eyewall manages to choke itself off with time here.
Yeah, certainly within the next few hours.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll see that. We can watch that happen here on radar with time.
Certainly. We have a question coming in. What are the chances? Well, this is kind of a hard question to answer. I think Nathan will be better at that, or our chief hurricane analyst, Devin, will be better at that. But what is the chances of the Atlantic seeing a Category 5 this year?
Okay, so this is something where it's like, you know, you can't make an absolute prediction because we don't actually know. But odds are we'll see one. I think it's more likely than not we'll see one, for sure. So I'd definitely be on guard if you're in the Atlantic, if you're in the Western Caribbean, anywhere from the Western Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico, all the way through like the East Coast. No matter where you are, I'd be keeping on high alert because it looks like mid to late September into October, it could be a nasty phase when it comes to hurricanes. But I think that in the Atlantic, a Category 5 is more likely than not at this time.
Certainly. We'll go ahead and answer some of your questions here. Let's see. We'll certainly have a lot of questions. It's kind of hard to keep up.
Yeah, we do. We have one that says the MJO looks to stall in a very favorable phase. Also, PDO looks similar to 1950. And the best analog for this season is 2005. Both years had an active October. What do you think? Yeah, I think an active October is pretty much inevitable at this point. I think that's pretty likely. I'm pretty convinced we're going to have an active October. What do the rest of you think?
Very much likely. We could potentially see something. I don't want to go ahead and fearmonger or anything here, but I think the chances of seeing a Gilbert or Wilma-like scenario, not really in terms of that strong, but in terms of a major category, a major hurricane plus in the Western Caribbean, is likely due to the sea surface temperature anomalies, and the current ocean temps are more than primed to support Category 5. Sean, I don't know if you want to go ahead and touch upon that.
Yeah, I mean, Category 5 for sure is possible with those kinds of waters. The waters are just boiling, waiting for something to happen. We'll see what happens there, but again, yeah, I think the Caribbean is going to be your watch zone in October. All right, we have some other questions. What do you expect the total damage of Haichen? What do you expect total damage of Haichen will do? So we actually have a really good scale for this, a CDPS scale, and you can see on the side of your screen that being a stage 8 popping up. That means that it is on the upper end of your hurricanes when it comes to their destruction potential. So this could cause catastrophic damage to Japan. It more than likely will. Specific damage totals, can't really tell you that at this point. Alright, we have another question. What's the MJO going to be like later this hurricane season? I think we just touched up on that pretty well. Pretty favorable MJO, at least for the Atlantic. Less than favorable for like the Northern Indian Ocean and Western Pacific. Alright, we have another person saying, if you look on the zoomed out loop of 2 to 4 hours, Haishen's been heading in more of a north-northeast direction for a while. North-northeast. Yeah, I can actually see that motion. If it continued on that particular motion, then you'd think it would hit the main island of Japan. But odds are that's not going to happen. That westward motion, it's probably going to stop doing that here sooner rather than later. But that is an interesting trend, to say the least. Alright, next question. Do you expect another storm after Haishen to threaten South Korea as a major typhoon? I'm not sure what the rest of the team thinks about this, but as of now, it appears that this is going to be the final storm of the onslaught, at least for the next week or so. We'll see. But it looks like Bavi, Mesak, and now Haishen, those were all really well supported on model guidance. We don't have anything big on model guidance last I checked within the next week. So I think that this will be the end, at least for the foreseeable future.
certainly the Western Pacific this year has been, I think, record-breaking below average. Um, this the ace this year is how much below average? I think Schwent, maybe you can touch upon that. I know it's near record-breaking how inactive the Western Pacific has been this year.
Yeah, I am relatively unsure on how active the Western
Eyewall.
Pacific has been. All right, Ryan's good at climatology, so Ryan,
Yeah,
what's Pacific looking like?
So for the Western Pacific, the ace is about half of what it normally is, 63. The average to date is 139. Only 11 named storms. The average is about 14 or 15 by this time of year. 6 typhoons. The average is about 9. And 3 major typhoons. The average is about 4. So not as below average, I guess. Not as not like it was, because the basin was completely shut down in July. In August, it really got going. So, but yeah, a very interesting year in the Westpac for sure.
Yeah, that is for sure at this point. We have another question. We actually have a few other questions. All right, let's see. Do you see a Mitch-like storm occurring this year? And they tacked on, but with less deaths. I think overall a Mitch-like storm is unlikely. Storms like Mitch are rare, but it's not impossible, especially with this kind of year. So, I don't know. We'll see. Another question. Could there be a stronger hurricane than Dorian this hurricane season? The technical answer is yes. The most likely answer is no. I mean, your best analog is 2005 so far, and Wilma did occur, which was stronger than Dorian, so I guess it's a maybe. If it would happen, I think it would occur in October, early October. But we'll see. We'll have to see what happens for sure with this storm. Team, what are your thoughts on the potential strength of some hurricanes in the Atlantic?
They're definitely going to contribute to that overall ace total. So we're likely to see 3 systems on the radar, but intensity, I don't know, rain and see, but
Yeah, we'll have to wait.
I think that
Go on.
I think that with this year, going back to what David said, those 3 systems, even though these are invests and really they're really unpredictable this far out, I don't think those are the systems that could potentially, do much harm besides maybe Bermuda. But then again, things are subject to change drastically. I think we could be looking at the system that's currently on Africa that's expected to come off the coast in the next 3 days. I think that one is the one that we could look for because that one has the model support for becoming a strong hurricane. I'm not really putting too much faith in those systems coming anywhere towards a large populated area. I expect those storms to curve out to sea because of the high. There hasn't been much model support for that high near the Bermuda. So I mean, we'll see what happens in the future.
And Thomas, just picking up on that, I'm going to go the opposite. The steering mechanisms, I think there's something over the states, and I think I'll go back to Mike's earlier comment about the models are showing a bit of a southward track, but it's far too early. But I think that high up there in the North Atlantic and off the northeast coast, I think that's going to build in. So my position is that they'll probably track slightly west northwest.
Oh, certainly, David. If we see that high buildup over there and that storm, if that main development invests decides, oh, hey, it's going to go south now because those highs have developed, well, we could definitely see a major threat for the central and for the Americas, certainly.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with that. We have some more questions. First question being, why do storms in the Atlantic not pass 195 miles per hour? I don't know if there's any real set in stone reason. I think the biggest reason is just the Atlantic has a lot of land. Your strongest storms seem to have happened most of the time. Near the Caribbean, your warmest waters happen to be around a lot of land, so it's just there's not enough time for that strengthening to occur. But in theory, you could have a storm with 195 mile per hour winds or above in the Atlantic Ocean. We have another question, and this is one that I think we'll all find interesting. What caused Patricia to have such strong winds? Well, there were a few things. So the first thing was Patricia was a smaller storm. It had a very tight and small core, and what that means is that it's going to be able to intensify faster, and it's going to take a lesser pressure. Well, it's actually going to, it's going to take less of a pressure drop to get to those high wind speeds than if it were a big storm. So, like a 920 millibar storm could have winds of 145 miles an hour or 175 miles an hour, depending on the size. The smaller the storm, the faster the winds can be. So Patricia had an extraordinarily low pressure, and it was an extraordinarily small storm, and the combination allows you to get a storm with winds of well over 200 miles per hour. Alright, with that being said, we have some other questions. First one, I'll put this one to the team. Do you expect Omar to regenerate?
That's pretty much a certain no, that's not going to happen.
No.
Wind shear's is too bad. The convection's pretty much completely gone. No, it's not going to happen.
No, I don't see Omar regenerating either. Alright, another question. Will Haichen make over $1 billion in damages? Certainly possible. Not 100% sure if it will, but I think it's definitely a possibility. Next question. What would the wind speeds be when Haichen gets to South Korea? So at this time, the Joint Typhoon Warning Center forecasts winds of about 65 miles per hour to be the maximum sustained winds as this heads in to South Korea before it weakens to a remnant low. But odds are tropical storm force winds will be striking at least the bottom half of South Korea. We'll have to see.
Going back to the earlier statement, we had a question of why don't we see 195 mile per hour plus storm in the Atlantic? Well, we may have already seen one, and I think Schwent and everybody on the team can agree that Labor Day is a storm that we really are not sure what the true intensity of was. It was a very small storm. It had a pressure of, I believe it was 894 millibars was reported. Something around there.
892.
892. Wow. Okay, so that's typically with smaller storms, you get a higher pressure. For example, we can a good example of that is Katrina and Andrew. They both peaked at the same intensity in terms of wind speeds, sustained wind speeds, 175. But obviously, Katrina was a lot bigger, much bigger system. Minimum central pressure was 901 millibars, whereas Andrew was 922. That's because Andrew was a lot smaller. And Labor Day was also a very small storm. And the fact that it got down to 894 millibars is insane. So that is a certain example of maybe even 200 or more mile per hour in the Atlantic. But we will never know due to the fact that we don't have recon, we don't have satellite. I mean, the only evidence we have is obviously that insanely low pressure according to the size of the system, as well as cinder blocks being tossed and freight cars being tossed, which is, strong tornado damage, which is insane.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure, you can touch up on that.
Yeah, we're down to the last 5 minutes of the stream, so it's your last chance to ask your questions. We're going to be going through as many as we can, as quickly as we can. Have the Gulf waters ever surpassed 90 degrees Fahrenheit? That is a Leahy question, since he's our climatology guy. Ryan, have those Gulf waters ever surpassed 90 degrees?
I don't think so. Not that I know of, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have in the past.
All right. We have another question here. Why didn't Bobby and Maysack do any damages even though they were near major hurricane strength? You can have storms that are damaging for a variety of reasons. The strength of a storm actually doesn't have a fantastic correlation with the amount of damage that it does. I think that someone that's really good at explaining that is Devin Williams. He made the CPDS scale. He's our chief hurricane analyst, and he actually made that because you can have a major hurricane that does little to no damage and a tropical storm that does billions of dollars in damage. So there is a wide spectrum of damage regardless of strength. And that's really the entire purpose of the CPDS scale. And Bavi and Maysack both were, number one, not as strong as Haichen, and number two, did not impact the same land areas and impacted South Korea at a weaker intensity than they were initially expected to be. So damages for Haichen could be lower than expected, which would certainly be good news. And we are glad that Bavi and Maysack, at least as of now, have not had huge damage totals. All right, we have a very large amount of other questions to get through, and then after this, we'll probably be going off the air. Firstly, how many storms do you expect will form in the what might have been season? Well, Nathan's on top of that, and I can tell you that it's a lot. We have another question. Someone saying they've spotted an interesting feature southeast of Bermuda with deep convection and weak closed circulation. What do you think about it? That's that feature that was just north of Cuba that we were talking about. I don't see it developing. I don't see much model support for it, but it's not impossible. All right, another question. Will there be another storm that hits Connecticut? I don't think so, but I know, Ryan, you're a climatology guy. Ryan, what do you think the odds are we get another Connecticut storm this year?
Well, I mean, usually storms hitting Connecticut, dead on is pretty rare, I would say. I mean, Isaias kind of went to the west, and then you had Faye also kind of going to the west. I think it made landfall in New Jersey. So two, northeast impacts for direct impacts for tropical systems in 1 year, which is certainly unusual but not unheard of. And it is possible. I want to stress that it's not impossible, but it's, I don't know.
All right. And with that being said, we have some more questions. Will Nathan and the rest of the team be live in the next stream? So Nathan should be coming back tomorrow. I know that especially the start of this stream was less than smooth, but in future those will be great. Nathan will be back, and when I'm hosting, we should have very smooth operations from beginning to end. All right, next question. Can future hurricanes in the Gulf rapidly intensify? Yes. Laura and Marco left a dent in the Gulf, but not a big enough dent to stop anything, because it appears that those sea surface temperatures have nearly completely recovered. Right, I'm just going to get through as many questions as I can in these final couple of minutes here. What is the fastest hurricane that has occurred in terms of 24-hour wind speed? What is the most rapidly intensifying storm? I believe Typhoon, Forest, I think, did it. I think Forest holds the record.
For wind speed, it's Wilma, actually.
Is it Wilma?
I was going to say Wilma. Wilma sounds like
Wilma went from a Cat 1 to a Cat 5 overnight.
So yeah, that's pretty fast. I'm not 100% sure. Let's see. What is the strongest maximum winds a tropical cyclone can possibly have? Not 100% sure about that.
Not much. According to Devin, I had a chat with Devin a few nights ago, and he says that really, even if you have the perfect conditions, low wind shear, high sea surface temperatures, drag, unfortunately, according to him, unfortunately exists. So we really can't see anything higher than Patricia. In fact, Patricia was thought to be impossible, where the impossible unfortunately became the reality. Theoretically, according to him, it's 230 miles an hour, but he said even that's very unlikely to happen. So, not much stronger than what we've seen.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind. Another question, what are our predictions for the disturbances in the Atlantic? I think we're pretty in line with NHC right now, with those systems and their odds of developing within the next 2 to 5 days. Does anyone disagree with the NHC all that much right now? I think they're doing a good job.
I think, yeah, the NH. I can't see any reason to disagree with the percentages for the National Hurricane Center.
Yeah, no, they're doing pretty well. I mean, both of those systems look like they're going to be developing. They have a lot of model support, and yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Why do hurricanes have a sort of limit when it comes to wind speed? We just discussed that. All right. Let's see. And our final question to close it out tonight, will Laura get retired? And I think the answer to that is a definite yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Certainly.
Laura, I'm nearly certain it'll get retired. I'm so certain, in fact, that if it doesn't, I will quit my entire weather career. So that should tell you just how certain I am that Laura will be getting retired. All right. Well, with that being said, to all of you that have watched tonight, thank you so much for watching, and to those of you that have been here since the beginning, thank you for being patient with the way things started. Also, even though this stream is ending, there's still a live stream active on the Force 13 main channel. You can watch our automated streaming service, where we have information about Haichen and automated satellite imagery there, so you can continue to get the latest on Haichen. We'll be running 24/7 coverage on Haichen for the foreseeable future until it strikes South Korea, to my knowledge. So go over there, check that out. Again, thank you all so much for watching. You can also check out our outlets. The links to those are in the description. And with that being said, I hope you did enjoy the stream. Again, thank you all so much for watching. And to the team, any final thoughts?
No?
Stay safe.
Yes.
Most importantly, stay safe. We live in a world where things are really not in the best of shape right now, as we've seen in recent news highlights. So I would just advise, stay safe, do your best, stay inside, preferably stay inside due to this COVID-19. But yeah, on all, just stay safe and God bless you.
All right, thank you all so much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night with more.